It is crossover Thursday on the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Texans, Locked On Browns, the first NFL playoff game of the 2023 season. And we're going to break it down the only way we know how.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Friends, to the show that never ends, crossover Thursday, Locked On Browns, Locked On Texans. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, Mr. Coty Davis. We appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns and Locked On Texans their first listen every single day. And if you were not part of the everyday crowd by now, we'll make a new plan. Stand, subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Shows are always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. This crossover Thursday is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. The NFL 2023 regular season in the books. Playoffs kick off Saturday. I am a tad bit nervous. You don't want to be the first one on the card, but hey, it is what it is. Coty Davis, obviously, here from Locked On Texans. Now, Coty, this game, obviously, Christmas Eve. And, for me, going into that game, well, it's Christmas Eve. We got our work to do. We got our content. It helped me if the Browns could get a laugher here today. Browns got their laugher. Texans got their wish the following week. CJ Stroud returns, get a W. You go into that Saturday night game, Indianapolis Colts, get your W. Jacksonville Jaguars say, you know what? We're going to give you one more present because we're going to throw a dud here in Nashville on Sunday. Congratulations, Houston Texans, AFC South champions. Coty, this first game, and we're going to get to the offensive side because really the Texans did not have their offense in that game. But there is still the Browns offense coming into this game. Joe, with a little bit more rest now, he just gave the man basically had 11 weeks off, played for 5. Got about 16 days of rest and is going to try to fire it up here in Houston. Amari Cooper spoke to the media today. He's going to be back. Now, your thought here, because this is, breaking down both sides of the ball. This is big because obviously this Texans defense has already seen the Cleveland Browns' best punch.
Yeah, they did. But the one thing that I always go back and say when you go back and take a look at that very first game, the Christmas Eve game where the Houston Texans lost 36-22. And Jeff, the final score was definitely does not indicate how much of a blowout that was. I believe Cleveland was up 22-7 at the half, but yes, we already know the numbers. Joe Flacco, had a phenomenal day throwing for almost 400 yards. Amari Cooper catching for almost 300. He finished the day with 265, 266 or something along those lines. But the one thing that I always go back and say, and this is something that Coach D'Amico Ryans and Matt Burt, the defensive coordinator, talked about, is the fact that version of the Texans defense that you saw was not healthy. The one thing I've loved so much about the Houston Texans in 2023, we all know about the cliche next man up mentality. And, when you hear that, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. We understand it. But this is a team, ever since the second week of training camp, when Scott Quisenberry went down with an ACL and MCL tear, this is a team who has dealt with injury after injury after injury after injury after injury all the way down. They still dealing with a lot of injuries. However, that next man up mentality is the approach that this team has always lived by. And that was the very first time where I said, this team has finally got derailed by injuries, because when you go back and you take a look at going into the game, you already didn't have Will Anderson Jr. You lost Jonathan Grenard. If not the first defensive drive, it took place in the second defensive drive. When you take a look at the secondary, your cornerback number 2 in Steven Nelson went down with a foot injury. Even though he came back, you can tell that he was still hampered by the foot injury, and you end up losing your starting safety in Jimmy Ward. And Jimmy Ward, every time he's on the field, the Texans do not give up explosive plays. when he's not on the field, the Texans give up explosive plays. I say all that just to say a lot of the mishaps that took place, a handful of the mishaps that took place in that game was due to the fact that a lot of those guys wasn't on the field and they was hurt. Now, a couple weeks later, credit to Nick Caserio and Coach D'Amico Ryans, they have added depth in the secondary on that defensive front. Guys like Tierra Tart, a guy that has came in and within 2 to 3 games has added valuable depth to that defensive line unit. And we all know the best thing that you have to do with Joe Flacco is make sure you get after him, get him out the pocket, make sure you get him uncomfortable. And then when you take a look at the secondary, the fact that you went out there and added Kareem Jackson, like it's going to be a completely different defense that you saw a couple weeks ago on Christmas Eve.
And there's no question about it. And that is one thing that is probably pretty parallel between these teams is the massive adjustments on the fly these teams have had to make week to week to try and get through to even get to where they're here. Obviously, major injuries for the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans. One thing, and we don't have time to get totally into it here. One thing that I'm very curious about here is not just Joe Flacco in the passing game. Is over the last 2 weeks, the Houston Texans run defense, which had been really, really good this year, has struggled over the last couple of weeks. The Browns got to take it easy on Sunday. The Houston Texans obviously had to play a full ball game Saturday to get to this point, and of course then got help again on Sunday. So the question there, and I believe it was 225 or Houston, Indianapolis went for at least 225 last week. The Browns, they have not run the ball well this year, but the Cleveland Browns did get to sit Wyatt Teller. They did get to sit Ethan Posick. They did get to sit Joel Bitonio last week. Jerome Ford carried the ball 3 times. Only reason he did is they wanted to save Kareem Hunt, and Pierre Strong was limited that day with a back injury. The Browns would like to get some semblance of a run game going here. Every team at some point is probably going to need to lean on their run game in a playoff game somewhere when weather could be a factor. Obviously not going to be the case on Sunday. Hopefully they fix that little hole in the roof so we won't have to worry about any of that stuff on Sunday. But that is one thing that I'm looking forward to here. I feel that Joe in the passing game, should have success. Are they going to do what they did the first time? I don't think so, because you don't expect that to happen. You just don't. And look, it's great that Joe was on the run that he's on, but to say, okay, well, this guy is now going to throw for a 5th straight game. You somewhat have to, think to yourself, eventually we're not going to get the A+ Joe Flacco effort. And when that happens, you have to hopefully be able to rely on some other things to get you through. They should have Elijah Moore back. They should have Amari Cooper back. Rookie Cedric Tillman, most likely in the concussion protocol, won't be available, but David Bell had his best career game for the Cleveland Browns last week. So all these are factors that could help the Browns offense, but I do think we are going to see a little bit more than we saw the first time out of this Texans defense. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about that because we literally have, the hot newcomer quarterback in the league against a veteran defensive coordinator. So certainly a talking point there. Jeff Lloyd, Cody Davis, crossover Thursday, Locked On Browns, Locked On Texans. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Look, most of us, we got to do what we got to do to maintain. And, if it's A, B, and C, let's make A, B, and C better. Don't worry about D, E, and F. The more you put on your plate as far as diversity could make it more difficult for absolute change. That's why just trying to enhance what you already know works for you could be a big key to success. And that's where therapy can help you. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really, really stick. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you should probably give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get started, and you get matched with a licensed therapist. If it's not working with that therapist, you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Continuing on here, crossover Thursday, Locked On Texans, Locked On Browns. Your host, Jeff Floyd, Mr. Coty Davis from Locked On Texans. And, of course, we always appreciate all of you who make our shows first listen every single day. If you want to be an everydayer, it's simple, folks. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, Locked On Texans YouTube channel, and you are in. Shows are always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. Now, Coty, and this is going to probably be the defining matchup in this game. It will be, the young hotshot. And look, I have zero issues with CJ Stroud. I walked out of, I watched those combine workouts and all the eyes were on Anthony Richardson. Everybody wanted to talk about Bryce Young, who wasn't working out. And young DTR from the Cleveland Browns was in that group too. CJ Stroud went out and had, in my opinion, had one of the most absolute best quarterback workouts I've ever seen at the combine. He knew who to throw high to. He knew who to throw low to. Everything he did. So this transition that he's made to this point surprises me none. But as great as the last 2 weeks have been for CJ Stroud as he came back, obviously, from his concussion injury, all of a sudden, it goes to nowhere. None of it means anything. And all of a sudden, all the pressure goes up. The expectations hopefully go up. I do think the Texans are going to be a team to be around for many, many years. But all of a sudden, here goes CJ Stroud into a huge, huge moment. And yes, he's played well at times in big moments in his collegiate career. Didn't always come out on the right end of it. But this is a big one for young CJ Stroud Saturday.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And look, everyone understand that the Texans struggled in that first game on the offensive side of the ball. Of course, that was without CJ. And I'm not worried about CJ, quote unquote, making the moment too big, because the one thing that I've loved most about CJ, didn't matter if it was rookie minicamp, OTAs, training camp, preseason, or regular season, he's always even keeled. And that is part of the reason why we have seen CJ have so much success in his very first season. And I am intrigued to see how is CJ going to fare against the Cleveland Browns defense, because this is one of, if not the top rated defense in the league. However, the one thing that I would say is every time that there is a challenge, or every time there is I wonder how CJ will fare against this defense, this defensive-minded head coach. He has had some of his very best games. When you take a look in the regular season, he had faced off against Mike Tomlin, Todd Bowles, and Dennis Allen. And he has won all three of those matchups. And in those three matchups combined, he has averaged a total of 325 yards a game. And of course, against Todd Bowles, everybody remembers that was one of the clutchest moments that he had, and one of the clutchest moments of the season. When you take a look at how he took the field, what was it, like a minute and 30 left on the clock, and he drove
probably
the Houston
less,
Texans. Yeah, probably even less. And he drove the Houston Texans downfield and was able to get the game-winning touchdown. And CJ Stroud, man, that young man is special. And you guys are going to see on Saturday, it's like, it doesn't matter what is going on, he's definitely going to find a way. And this is probably the first time when I'm looking at CJ and I'm not falling for a rookie quarterback is going to struggle against one of, if not the best defensive team in the league. This is a rookie quarterback already. If I'm not mistaken, he's like top 5, top 10 in quarterback that has had success against zone defense, which is very tricky and very hard for a rookie, not just a rookie quarterback, any young quarterback to thrive in. I mean, that is something that Davis Mills over the last 2 seasons was talking about, how hard it is to go up against the NFL defense, especially with the zone coverages and the disguises and stuff. Just take a look at what he did against the Colts. Like, that was a zone defensive team, and he basically picked their secondary apart, especially in the fourth quarter. So, I'm very intrigued to see how CJ is going to perform, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, like you said, what he did in the past for those throughout the regular season. It doesn't matter, how he has become one of the best rookie quarterbacks of all time. Not all of that goes out the window come Saturday inside of NRG Stadium. It's a playoff game, and it's going to be very intriguing to see if he's able to sustain that. But to be honest with you, Jeff, I'm not worried.
Well, we're going to say this, and his success against zone coverage is definitely a true testament and obviously a great thing. I'm not sure what that's going to do for C.J. Stroud come Saturday. Cleveland Browns are going to have Greg Newsome. They're going to have Denzel Ward. They're going to have Martin Emerson. Grant Delpit, his IR eligibility opened up today. He practiced today. The Browns may have their secondary intact. And if that is going to be the way it's going to be, I think it's not really too hard to figure out what Jim Schwartz is going to figure his game plan is. I am going to pressure the living daylights out of this young man and see how he responds. And the Browns, and this has been the biggest success for them defensively this year, is they can do this because they have the guys on the outside with Ward, with Newsome, with Emerson to match up with any wide receiver unit in the NFL, and it's played out obviously certainly a bunch this year. So he can say, I want to commit X amount to rushing the quarterback. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, over 100 total tackles this year, 3.5 sacks from a linebacker spot. Myles Garrett, I think his snap percentage this year is down 7-8% from what he averaged as far as overall snaps in his career. He has the highest pressure rate of his entire career to this point with less snaps. But the thing is it's used to be the old Michael Jordan and the Jordanaires. It used to be Myles Garrett and the Garrett heirs. That's not the case anymore. Zadarius Smith is a household name. Second-year defensive end Alex Wright has 4 straight games with a sack now, really developing on the fly here for the Cleveland Browns. Ogbo Okoronkwo, it's kind of hard to figure, and obviously Houston's familiar with him, how much he can actually bring. He did play a little bit on Sunday. Still trying to figure out what exactly he can contribute. There may be times where the Browns are going to use him just straight stand up, make it easier. Obviously, hopefully less contact he can avoid himself with his shoulder. But the Browns are going to be committed to trying to put as much pressure as they possibly can on C.J. Stroud. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. That's just the way it goes. And this would be Jim Schwartz's game plan against any quarterback he was going to face against this weekend. So that is truly going to be the matchup. I think C.J. Stroud is going to be up for it. Even if he makes a mistake or two, that doesn't mean C.J. Stroud's not going to go out there and give you 60 minutes of the best that he's got. And, at the end of the day, and we have predictions and path to victory, which we'll get to you here in segment 3. But this would hopefully, for C.J. Stroud, this will be the ultimate learning experience. You get to go one of the best defensive coordinators, in the game. And, maybe this would have been, I think I would have felt a little bit more nervous Browns-wise if they had already if C.J. played in that first game. Because you know what? CJ would have said, I got a lot of film I can go back and look at, because nobody was thinking playoffs between these two at the time. They were thinking, and then all of a sudden the last 3 weeks came out and happened how they did. But we're going to get into it. We're going to get to what a path to the victory for the Texans looks like, what a path to the victory for the Cleveland Browns looks like, some predictions as we start to close this one out. Crossover Thursday, Locked On Texans, Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for being along for the ride. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. It's kind of scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if myself, my wife, my daughters got sick, and while a supply chain issue kept them for the life-saving medication they might need. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Jeff Lloyd, Coty Davis, your latest Locked On Browns, Locked On Texans crossover Thursday, the first playoff game of the NFL 2023 playoffs. Coty, now we both have some feelings here. Obviously, you think the defense should play better. I agree the defense should play better for Houston. A lot of this is certainly going to come down to the Browns defense. Hopefully they're healthy. It's been in weeks. against a guy who is going to supplant himself as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, probably for a long, long time to come. What does a path to the victory look like for the Houston Texans on Saturday?
Well, it's interesting. In the second segment, you and I, we talked about CJ and how he's going to fare against one of the best defensive minded coordinators in the league. But I really do believe, as great as CJ is, and I really have no worry or concern if he's going to find a way. But the one issue that I do have when you look at the path to victory, my thing is, who in the world is going to step up in the wide receiving unit? That's my biggest issue, because look, you saw what took place on Saturday. Nico Collins, for I believe the 4th time this season, if I'm not mistaken, had recorded over 150 receiving yards. The man had a $195 against the Colts. Played a really big factor in stepping up and taking the quote unquote wide receiver number 1 role for this organization. However, once again, you are going up against, if not one of the best, the best defensive teams in the league. Jeff, you already said it. Your secondary is intact, and I'm pretty sure without a shadow of a doubt, if Nico Collins isn't number 1 on the scouting report, I'm pretty sure he's going to be number 2, especially considering that this is a wide receiving core that, of course, unfortunately, and I hate this so much, you still do not have Tank Dell. Of course, he's out for the season, but you still do not know the game day status of Robert Woods and Noah Brown. Even if one of, or if both of them suits up on Saturday, it's still going to be like, okay, which versions of one of these guys that we're going to get, because both of them, especially Noah Brown, has been on a roller coaster, has been kind of inconsistent for this organization. We've seen Noah Brown had a stretch where I believe in like 2 or 3 games, he had caught for like recorded over 300 and something receiving yards, and then next thing you know, everybody's asking, where is Noah Brown? Blah, 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 blah. So that's going to be one path to victory on the offensive side of the ball for the Houston Texans, making sure that that wide receiving core can provide some help to Nico Collins. And then on the defensive side of the ball, especially considering that you're going to have Will Anderson, even though he's still banged up with that ankle injury. And as of right now, we're still waiting on to see whether or not Jonathan Grenard is going to play. But even if he doesn't, when you take a look at guys that Nick Caserio has brought along, i.e. Tierra Tart, that defensive line unit has to get after Joe Flacco. They have to get him out the pocket. They have to make him uncomfortable. You cannot let him get comfortable back there, pick apart your secondary, pick apart your defense, and then next thing you know, we're sitting here with another 300 and something passing yard day for Joe Flacco. Look, without a shadow of a doubt, going back to his days in Baltimore, I always say he was one of the most underrated quarterbacks during that time, and it looked like that still could be true today, because the man been balling ever since you guys took a chance on him and signed him, and he's part of the reason why you guys are in this situation. But look, they have to make sure that they do not let Joe Flacco get into a rhythm, because we saw once you do that, the Browns offense is very hard to stop, especially if he's connecting with Amari Cooper. Even though he's coming off the heel injury, I don't care.
Yeah, and for me, this is a big one for me, is because obviously, a main focus for this Houston Texans team right now is, hey, we can't let Amari Cooper bust us up for 265 yards. Mm-hmm. But David Njoku has been playing at an extremely high level since Joe Flacco has been here. Part of that is because the Browns all of a sudden now can throw the ball vertically down the field. That has been the one thing that this Browns team has struggled with during Coach Kevin Stefanski's tenure here. Now seem to do it with regularity and with consistency. And when you have a 6'4", 250-pound tight end who runs a 4.6 and has a vertical jump of 40 inches, yeah, life is pretty easy when nobody's paying attention to you coverage-wise. You go to the Thursday night game against the New York Jets. Amari Cooper can't go. My first thought process is, man, New York Jets better throw the kitchen sink at David Njoku. David Njoku hung 100 on him in the first quarter. So that just tells you where he is as a confidence level. That, one of these players that was always flirting with success, now that he has the numbers, that type of numbers, it's just absolutely, the bottle's just blown open. He is there. He is ready to go. Elijah Moore, certainly a player that can contribute. For me, the run game is going to be an interesting thing because the Browns, and Joe is fantastic with the play action, but there's got to be some threat. Obviously, if you're going to, with play action, it's great and all, but if you're not running the ball with any success, who's paying attention to it when it comes down at the end of the day? So for me, that is a key point there as well. Defensively, this team has just gone through so much and so much adversity, so many players missing. Yeah, CJ Stroud coming and being able to play in this game is a big, big win for the Texans, certainly. But I have a hard time doubting anything from this Cleveland Browns defense. We're getting short on time. I'll give the ball to you first here, Coty. Final score, prediction, Sunday, Browns, Texans.
It's going to be a very fun matchup, but I think it's going to come down to CJ making some magic happen, man. And I have the Houston Texans winning and advancing 21-17.
I'm not sure the Cleveland Browns are going to go into Houston and score 50% less of the points they scored the first time. I think the Browns are going to win this. I think CJ Stroud is going to put the world on notice just how good he is. And the Carolina Panthers will continue to take all the laughs and the L's that they probably deserve.
Thank you.
They went and, mortgaged their future. They have no first round pick. So how do you build around the quarterback when you don't have a first round pick? And it's not really maybe even a slight on Young because, situation, coaching, everything. But you've got a winning coach in DeMeco Ryans, an organization that has absolutely turned their tides. Houston Texans are going to be good. Like I told your good friend John when we sat down a little bit before Christmas Eve, Houston Texans are probably 1 year early to this party. You're all going to take it. You ain't going to give it back by any means whatsoever. But next year is going to be the year everybody is really, really concerned about the Houston Texans. I think if you told me 26-14, 28-17, Cleveland Browns are going to get this first W, in my opinion, here. So what did you think? Did you think Coty was going to say differently? Did you think I was going to say differently? Come on now, folks. It's the playoffs. And the other thing is we want to make sure as many of you are going to be coming back here, you everydayers, next week as all. We know there's going to be a little fadeaway once we're all eliminated. So we'll make sure you all keep coming back. We appreciate all of you who listen to Locked On Texans, Locked On Browns every single day. The everydayers, you went in, it's simple. Locked On Browns YouTube channel, Locked On Texans YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Shows are always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports 247. I'm sure there'll be a lot of Texans shows airing there. There will be a lot of Browns shows airing there, so make sure you check all of that out. And with all that, we want to thank everybody. For one of us, this is going to be the end of the line. So obviously, for one of our group of listeners is going to be the last crossover of the year. We thank you all. We appreciate you all. Look, we come here every day. We put a job out, but unless anybody comes to listen, it's really just words put on video. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate you. And with all that, hope everybody enjoys it. And let's just hope, we get one of the best playoff games in NFL history Saturday in Houston. This has been your crossover Thursday for the first playoff game of the 2023 NFL season. Jeff Lloyd, Coty Davis signing off.